Millionaire on his way to church for his marriage with his fiancée saw his ex standing at a traffic signal holding a little boy. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, today we bow our hearts before you with humility and gratitude. Please wrap every woman in this family with your divine protection. Give her strength when the world demands too much, peace when her heart grows tired, and honor for every silent sacrifice she makes. She is the backbone of homes, the keeper of love, the unseen warrior who carries families forward even when she is hurting. Bless our sisters with health, calm minds, and unshakable confidence. Bless our wives with patience, respect, and joy. Bless every woman here with dignity so strong that no hardship can break it. Let her tears turn into relief, her prayers into answered miracles, and her efforts into lasting peace. May she never feel alone, forgotten, or unappreciated. My beautiful family, I write with my heart open. Every word I share is written with love, effort, and respect for you. When you stay, listen, and support, it gives meaning to everything I do. This is not just a channel. This is a family built on trust, prayer, and shared emotions. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, I am with Mr. Peter. Michael Pepper had imagined this morning 1,000 different ways, but none of them included his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the steering wheel. The Bentley sat at the red light outside St. Mary's Cathedral, engine purring. Through the tinted windows, Seattle's late spring sunshine painted everything gold. Inside the car, his best man, Ryder Vaughn, was talking about the reception, about the speech he'd prepared, about how beautiful Heather looked during the rehearsal yesterday. Michael heard none of it. His entire world had narrowed to the crosswalk 15 feet ahead. The woman standing there didn't see him. She was focused on the small hand gripping hers, looking down with the kind of smile that belonged to mothers everywhere. Sophia Dunkley wore a simple yellow sundress that moved in the breeze, her natural hair pulled back in a way that showed the face Michael used to trace with his fingers in the dark. She looked exactly the same. She looked completely different. She looked happy. But it wasn't Sophia who made Michael's heart stop. The little girl holding her hand had his eyes. Not similar eyes. Not sort of like his eyes. His exact grey-green eyes that his mother always said came from his grandmother, the unusual shade that strangers commented on. The child wore a purple dinosaur shirt and light-up sneakers, bouncing on her toes, waiting for the walk signal, chattering up at Sophia about something that made them both laugh. And there was a man with them, tall, athletic build, wearing a teacher's casual Friday outfit of khakis and a button-down. He carried a small backpack shaped like a ladybug, the kind parents bought for preschoolers. As Michael watched, frozen, the man bent down to adjust the little girl's shoe, his movements easy and familiar. The girl grabbed his face and planted a kiss on his cheek. "Daddy, you fixed it!" Her voice carried through the closed window, bright and trusting. The walk signal changed. The family started across the street, the little girl swinging between the two adults, feet lifting off the ground as they walked. A perfect moment. A complete family. A life that should have been his. "Michael, you good, man?" Ryder's voice came from far away. "Light's green." Michael didn't move. Behind them, a car honked, then another. The Bentley sat motionless at the intersection while traffic built up, and the family on the crosswalk reached the opposite sidewalk, disappearing around the corner toward the park. "Michael, what the hell?" Ryder turned to look at him, and whatever he saw on Michael's face made his expression shift from annoyed to concerned. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have." Michael's voice came out wrecked. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Heather's name lit up the screen. "Where are you?" "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, until he married a woman he loved, a woman who deserved better than what he was about to do. That woman who just crossed The words felt like broken glass in his throat. I destroyed my entire life for her 5 years ago. Ryder followed his gaze to the empty crosswalk. What woman? She's gone now, but she had a child with her. Michael finally turned to look at his best man, and he knew what Ryder would see, a man coming apart at the seams in a tuxedo that cost more than most people's monthly rent. A little girl. With my eyes, Ryder. She had my exact eyes. The honking behind them grew more insistent. Someone shouted out their window. Ryder's face cycled through confusion, understanding, and then something close to panic. Are you saying, I don't know what I'm saying? Michael's hands were still shaking. But I need to know. I need to... He didn't finish the sentence. He put the Bentley in park, right there at the green light, and opened the door. Michael, what are you doing? We have a wedding in 20 minutes. But Michael was already out of the car, already running. The tuxedo jacket flapped behind him as he sprinted down the sidewalk in Italian leather shoes that weren't made for this. Behind him, Ryder was shouting his name. Behind him, angry drivers were honking. Behind him, somewhere, a cathedral full of guests waited for a groom who was currently chasing ghosts. He caught sight of them at the park entrance. The man was buying ice cream from a cart, while Sophia helped the little girl onto a bench. Michael slowed, his breath coming hard, and for a moment he just watched. The scene was so domestic, so peaceful. They were laughing about something. The little girl was trying to tell a story with huge gestures, nearly hitting her mother in the face, and Sophia caught her hands gently, kissing her knuckles before redirecting the energy. 5 years ago, Sophia had wanted this. She'd talked about the future in careful tones, testing whether Michael wanted the same things. He'd panicked. He'd said he was married to his company, that he needed to focus. That domestic life felt like suffocation. He'd hurt her because he was scared, and she'd left with her pride intact and her heart in pieces. 3 weeks later, he'd regretted everything. But by then, she'd changed her number, moved from their neighborhood, disappeared so completely it was like she'd never existed. Except she had existed, and apparently she'd been carrying his child when she vanished. Michael started walking toward them, his footsteps unsteady on the park path. The man saw him first. His friendly expression shifted to wariness as he registered the tuxedo, the obvious emotional distress, the way Michael was staring at the little girl like she held the secrets of the universe. Can I help you? The man's voice was polite but protective, stepping slightly between Michael and the bench where Sophia sat. Sophia looked up. The ice cream cone in her hand slipped, vanilla pooling on the ground. All the color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. 5 years of separation collapsed into nothing. 5 years of wondering, of what-ifs, of dreams where they fixed everything. All of it lived in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Soph! Michael's voice broke on her name. The little girl looked between the adults, her young face scrunching in confusion. Mommy, why did you drop the ice cream? Sophia couldn't seem to speak, couldn't seem to move. She just stared at Michael like he was a bomb that had gone off in the middle of her carefully constructed life. The man looked at Sophia, then at Michael, his protective stance shifting to something more alert. Sophia, you know this guy. Michael couldn't take his eyes off the child. Up close it was even more obvious. She had his eyes, yes, but also his stubborn chin. The way her hair grew in a cowlick at her temple. The distinctive shape of his ears. This wasn't coincidence or wishful thinking. This was biology screaming truth. Is she mine? The question came out raw and desperate. Sophia, is she mine? The world seemed to hold its breath. A jogger ran past. A dog barked in the distance. The ice cream cart vendor called out to another customer. But in their small circle, everything had stopped. The man's face changed as understanding crashed over him. He looked at the little girl, really looked at her, and then looked at Michael's face. The resemblance was undeniable. His voice, when it came, was tight with something terrible. "What is he talking about, Sophia?" The little girl sensed the tension, her small body going still in the way children do when adults start acting strange. She scooted closer to her mother on the bench, her light-up sneakers blinking red in the afternoon sun. Sophia finally found her voice. It came out as barely a whisper, but in the awful silence, everyone heard it perfectly. "Julian." She was looking at the man, not at Michael. "Julian, I can explain." "Can you?" Julian's voice cracked. "Can you explain why this man just asked if your daughter is his? Can you explain why you never told me?" He stopped, his jaw working as he tried to control whatever was rising in his chest. "Who is he, Sophia?" Michael was still trying to process what he was hearing. Julian. This man had a name. This man was part of their lives. This man was, "You're married." Michael's eyes dropped to Sophia's left hand, to the simple gold band he hadn't noticed before. The realization hit like a physical blow. "You're married to him." "Daddy?" The little girl's voice was small and scared. She reached for Julian with both hands, wanting to be picked up, wanting safety from whatever was happening with the adults. "Daddy, why is everyone upset?" Julian picked her up automatically, the movement so practiced it was clear he'd done it thousands of times. He held her close, one hand cupping the back of her head, and Michael saw it then. Saw the way the child tucked her face into Julian's neck, saw the complete trust in how she wrapped her small arms around him, saw that whatever biological connection existed between Michael and this girl, Julian was the one she called Daddy. "Philip, baby, everything's okay." Sophia stood, her voice shaking but trying to stay calm for her daughter, for their daughter. "Why don't you go play on the swings for a minute while the adults talk?" "I don't want to." Philip's voice was muffled against Julian's shoulder. "The fancy man is making you cry." Michael looked down and realized his face was wet. He was crying in a tuxedo in a public park, while his wedding guests waited at a church, and his entire understanding of reality shattered around him. Ryder appeared at his elbow, breathing hard from running. "Michael, we need to—" He stopped when he saw the scene in front of him, his mouth falling open. Julian's voice cut through everything else, cold and controlled in a way that made it clear he was barely holding himself together. "You're the ghost she won't talk about, the one from before." He looked at Michael's tuxedo, at the boutonniere pinned to his lapel. "You're getting married today, aren't you? And you just happened to see us." Michael nodded, unable to form words. "So let me make sure I understand this." Julian's arms tightened around Philip. "You're standing here in a tuxedo, asking if my daughter is yours, on your wedding day." He looked at Sophia, and the betrayal in his eyes was devastating. "And you? How long have you known he didn't know? How long have you let me believe he abandoned you both?" "Julian, please." "How long, Sophia?" The silence was answer enough. Philip started crying, overwhelmed by the tension she couldn't understand. Sophia reached for her, but Philip burrowed deeper into Julian's arms. The rejection was small but complete, and Michael saw it break something in Sophia's expression. Michael's phone rang again. Heather, the woman waiting for him at the altar, the woman who loved him, the woman who had no idea her almost husband was currently destroying 3 lives in a park across town. "I have to go." Michael's voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I have a wedding. I have people waiting. But this isn't over. We need to talk. We don't need anything from you." Julian's voice was sharp. "You're 5 years too late. That's my daughter. I've been her father since she was old enough to say the word. I changed her diapers. I walked the floor with her when she had colic. I taught her to ride a bike without training wheels last month. You contributed DNA. I contributed a life, so whatever you think you have a right to, you're wrong. She's my biological child. And I'm her legal father. I adopted her. She has my last name. So you can take your biology and your tuxedo and your perfect life and get the hell away from my family. Ryder gently pulled at Michael's arm. Come on, man, we need to go. But Michael couldn't move, couldn't process that he'd just found out he had a daughter and lost her in the same breath. Couldn't understand how the universe could be this cruel to show him what he'd missed at the exact moment when he was supposed to be committing to someone else. Sophia finally spoke, her voice thick with tears. Michael, please, not like this, not in front of Philip. He looked at the little girl, his daughter, who was crying into another man's shoulder, wanting nothing to do with the stranger who'd made her mother drop ice cream and her daddy's voice go scary. What's her full name? Michael needed something, anything to hold on to. Sophia hesitated, then whispered, Philip Whitmore, she's 4 years old. 4 years? 4 years of birthdays and first words and skinned knees and bedtime stories that he'd missed. 4 years that he could never get back. 4 years that Julian had given her instead. I have to go. He backed away, his eyes still on Philip. But I'll come back. I don't know when or how, but I'll come back. Don't, Julian said flatly. We don't want you here. But Sophia said nothing, and in her silence, Michael heard everything. Ryder pulled him back toward the park entrance, toward the abandoned Bentley that was probably getting towed by now, toward a wedding that was already ruined, even if no one knew it yet. Michael let himself be led, his body moving on autopilot, while his mind stayed in the park with the little girl who had his eyes. Behind them, he heard Philip ask in a small voice, Daddy, why was the fancy crying man looking at me like that? He didn't hear Julian's answer. The Bentley was already gone when they reached the street, towed by an efficient city that didn't care about existential crises. Ryder called an Uber. They rode in silence, Ryder texting Geneva rapid-fire updates, while Michael stared out the window and saw nothing. When they pulled up to the cathedral, Heather's sister Daphne was pacing outside, her phone pressed to her ear. She saw them, and her face flooded with relief that immediately shifted to fury when she registered how late they were. But when she got close enough to see Michael's face, her anger evaporated into concern. Oh my God, what happened? Michael looked at the cathedral doors. Inside, 300 guests were waiting. Inside, Heather stood in a dress she'd spent months choosing. Inside, his entire future was laid out like a roadmap, and all he could see was a little girl with light-up sneakers who called another man Daddy. I need to talk to Heather, he said quietly, before the ceremony. I need to tell her something. Daphne's eyes widened. Michael, you can't see the bride before? I have to. Something in his voice stopped her protests. She looked at Ryder, who gave a tiny, helpless shrug, and then back at Michael. This is bad, isn't it? Michael didn't answer. He just walked through the cathedral doors, past the confused ushers, past his mother Geneva, who stood up with alarm when she saw his face, straight toward the bride's room where Heather was putting on her veil. He knocked once. Heather opened the door, radiant in ivory lace, her smile bright and trusting. You're not supposed to see me yet. It's bad luck. She stopped when she saw his expression. Michael, what's wrong? And standing there, looking at this good woman who'd rebuilt him after Sophia broke him, who'd been patient with his emotional distance, who'd loved him despite sensing he was never quite fully present, Michael knew exactly what he had to do. Can we talk? Alone? Heather's smile faded. She looked past him to where her mother and sister hovered in the hallway, then back at Michael's devastated face. Okay, she said quietly, and stepped back to let him into the room. The door closed behind them, and outside St. Mary's Cathedral, 300 guests waited for a wedding that would never happen. Chapter 2. The family he shattered. The bride's room smelled like roses and hairspray, and the expensive perfume Heather had chosen specifically for this day. Michael stood just inside the doorway, watching Heather close it behind him with careful precision, her movements controlled in the way they always were when she was trying not to panic. She turned to face him, still wearing that wedding dress that had cost a small fortune, still looking like every groom's dream. But her eyes weren't dreaming anymore. They were searching his face with the sharp intelligence that made her one of Seattle's best corporate lawyers. "You're late," she said quietly. "And you look like someone died." Michael opened his mouth and nothing came out. "How did you tell a woman on her wedding day that you'd just discovered a child you didn't know existed? How did you explain that the ghost of your past had just become horrifyingly, devastatingly real?" "I need to tell you something," he finally managed. "And after I tell you, you're going to hate me." Heather's face went very still. She walked over to the small sofa by the window and sat down carefully, arranging her dress around her with the same precision she'd closed the door. When she looked up at him, her expression was already bracing for impact. "Just say it, Michael." So he did. He told her about the red light, about Sophia standing at the crosswalk, about the little girl with his eyes. He told her about running through the park in his tuxedo, about Julian and the adoption and the 4 years he'd missed. He told her everything except the part where his heart had recognized something the moment he saw Philip, something that felt like waking up from a long sleep. When he finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Heather sat there in her wedding dress, her hands folded in her lap, and for a long moment she didn't move. Then she started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, something darker, more bitter. "Of course," she said. "Of course this happened today. Of course." "Heather? No. It's actually perfect timing." She stood up, and Michael saw that her hands were shaking. "Do you know what I was thinking about while I was getting ready? I was thinking about how you sometimes say her name in your sleep. Sophia. I was thinking about how you zone out when certain songs play, how you get this look on your face like you're somewhere else. I was thinking that maybe after we got married, after enough time passed, you'd finally be fully here with me." Michael felt like he'd been punched. "You knew. I knew you were haunted by someone. I didn't know who. I told myself it didn't matter because you chose me, you proposed to me, you were going to marry me." Her voice broke on the last word. "But you weren't choosing me, were you? You were just trying to bury her. That's not fair, isn't it?" Heather's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. "Be honest, Michael. Right now, standing here, be honest for once. Did you ever love me the way you loved her?" The question hung between them like a blade. Michael wanted to lie, wanted to tell Heather that yes, he loved her just as much, differently but equally. But standing there in her wedding dress with her world falling apart, she deserved better than lies. "No," he whispered. "I loved you. I do love you. But not the way I loved her. I'm sorry." Heather nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something she'd always known. She walked over to the mirror and started taking off her veil with steady hands. "What are you doing?" "I'm not marrying you." Her voice was calm, almost eerily so. "There are 300 people out there. My father spent a fortune on this wedding, and I don't care. I'm not marrying a man who just found out he has a secret child and is clearly still in love with the mother. Heather, I'm not asking you to call this off. I'm just telling you what happened." "And what?" She spun around, and now the tears were falling. "What did you think would happen, Michael? You'd tell me about your daughter. We'd get married anyway, and everything would be fine. You'd just work this out on the side while we built our life together. Did you think I wouldn't see it in your eyes every single day, that you wished you were with them instead of me?" Michael had no answer because she was right. The moment he'd seen Philip, something had shifted in him that couldn't be shifted back. The moment he'd seen Sophia again, he'd felt the ground beneath his carefully constructed life start to crack. "I can't do this to you," he said finally. "No, you can't." Heather wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. "And I can't do this to myself. I can't spend the rest of my life being someone's second choice. A knock on the door made them both freeze. Heather's mother Vivian's voice came through, concerned and impatient. "Heather, sweetheart, we need to start in 5 minutes. Heather looked at Michael, then at the door, then back at Michael. For a moment he saw her waver, saw her consider going through with it anyway, because that's what you did when 300 people were waiting, when your father had spent a fortune, when backing out meant humiliation. But then her shoulders straightened, and Michael saw the woman who'd demolished opposing counsel in depositions, who'd built a career on never backing down from hard truths. "Mom," she called out, her voice steady despite the tears. "Can you send Dad in? And Michael's mother. We need to talk to them." "What? Heather? We don't have time." "Now, Mom, please." There was a pause, then hurried footsteps retreating. Heather turned back to Michael. "We're going to tell them together, and then you're going to walk out there and face all those people and explain why there's no wedding today. Do you understand me? You don't get to run from this. You don't get to disappear like you did with Sophia." Michael nodded, throat tight. He deserved that. He deserved worse than that. The door opened, and Judge Roland Knight walked in, followed by Geneva Pepper. Roland was already scowling, his judicial instincts clearly sensing disaster. Geneva took one look at her son's face, and her expression shifted from confused to alarmed. "What's going on?" Roland demanded. "We have a cathedral full of guests and a ceremony that should have started already." "There's not going to be a ceremony, Daddy." Heather's voice was quiet but firm. She looked at Michael. "Tell them." So Michael told the story again. This time, watching his mother's face cycle through shock and understanding and something that looked almost like relief. Watching Roland's expression darken with fury. Watching Heather stand there in her wedding dress, dignified in her devastation. When he finished, Geneva was the first to speak. "How old did you say the child is?" 4. "She's 4 years old." Geneva did the math quickly, her sharp mind working. "So Sophia was pregnant when you two ended things?" "She must have been. I didn't know. I swear to God, Mom, I didn't know." "Because you made it impossible for her to tell you." Geneva's voice was sharp. "You changed your number. You moved without leaving a forwarding address. You threw yourself into your company so completely that anyone who knew you before couldn't reach you. Isn't that right?" Michael couldn't meet her eyes. "I was hurt. I needed a clean break." "You got one." Geneva's disappointment was palpable. "And she got pregnant and alone." Roland had been silent, but now he spoke, his voice cold and controlled. "This other man, Julian, he adopted the child?" "Yes, sir." "So legally, he's the father. You're just a sperm donor who showed up 5 years too late." Roland looked at his daughter, and his expression softened. "Heather, sweetheart, you don't have to do this. We can still—" "No, Daddy." Heather shook her head. "We can't. Because even if we got married right now, even if I ignored all of this, I'd spend the rest of my life knowing I was his second choice, knowing he settled for me because he couldn't have her. And I love myself too much to do that." Geneva crossed the room and pulled Heather into a hug, and the gesture was so unexpected that Heather finally broke down completely, sobbing into Geneva's shoulder while her wedding dress crumpled between them. "You're better than this," Geneva whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're better than being someone's consolation prize. I raised my son better than this, but apparently he didn't listen." Michael felt about 2 inches tall. Roland looked at him with pure contempt. "You need to leave. Now. Go out through the side entrance. I'll make an announcement to the guests." "No." Heather pulled away from Geneva, wiping her eyes. "No, he stays. He tells them himself. He looks all those people in the eye and explains why he wasted their time, why he made a mockery of this, why he proposed to me when he was still in love with someone else." "Heather," Roland started, but she cut him off. "He owes me that much, Daddy. He owes me the truth in front of everyone, not a quiet escape while you clean up his mess. Michael looked at this woman he'd almost married, seeing her clearly maybe for the first time, seeing her strength and her pride and the way she demanded dignity even in her worst moment. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll tell them." They walked out of the bride's room together, this strange procession of broken plans. Daphne was waiting in the hallway, and one look at her sister's face told her everything. "Oh, Heather!" "Not now," Heather said. "Help me get out of this dress. I'm not standing up there in it." While Heather disappeared with Daphne into another room, Michael stood with Geneva and Roland in the hallway outside the sanctuary. Through the doors he could hear the murmur of 300 voices, the occasional laugh, the rustle of programs. "What are you going to say?" Geneva asked. "The truth." "The truth is you're a coward," Roland said flatly. "The truth is you ran from one woman 5 years ago and you were about to do it again today." Michael flinched, but didn't argue. "You're right." "Damn right I'm right." Roland's voice was harsh. "And now you're going to walk in there and face the consequences. Then you're going to figure out what kind of man you actually want to be. Because right now, you're not much of one." Heather emerged in a simple black dress, her face washed clean of makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked younger without all the wedding trappings, and somehow more powerful. "Ready?" she asked Michael. "No." "Good." She pushed open the sanctuary doors. The cathedral fell silent as they walked down the aisle together, not as bride and groom, but as two people whose lives had just exploded. Michael could feel 300 pairs of eyes on them, could hear the confused whispers starting, could see his business partner Knox standing up with alarm. They stopped at the altar. Heather turned to face the crowd, and Michael stood beside her. "Thank you all for coming," Heather said, her voice carrying through the cathedral with the same authority she used in courtrooms. "I know you're confused. I know you came here expecting a wedding, but that's not going to happen today." The whispers grew louder. Michael saw his business partner's wife lean over to whisper something, saw Heather's colleagues from her law firm exchange glances. "Michael has something he needs to tell you," Heather continued. "And then we're all going home." She stepped aside, giving him the floor. Michael looked out at 300 faces. Friends, colleagues, distant relatives, Heather's entire law firm. People who'd taken time off work, who'd bought gifts, who'd traveled from other cities. People who deserved better than this. "I have a daughter," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I found out this morning. She's 4 years old, and I didn't know she existed until I saw her at a traffic light on my way here. Her mother is someone I used to love, someone I thought I'd lost forever. And her father is a man who's been raising her since she was a baby because I wasn't there." The cathedral was dead silent now. Heather deserves better than a man who would propose to her while still in love with someone else. She deserves better than a man who ran from his past instead of facing it. And you all deserve better than to waste your day watching me make promises I can't keep. He looked at Heather, who stood tall and dry-eyed. "I'm sorry. To everyone here, but especially to you. I'm sorry." He turned and walked down the aisle, alone this time. Behind him, he could hear the explosion of voices, the chaos of 300 people trying to process what they'd just heard. He didn't look back. Outside, in the brilliant Seattle sunshine, Michael Pepper stood on the cathedral steps and wondered how you begin to fix a life you'd just torn apart with your own hands. His phone buzzed. A text from Ryder. "Where are you going?" Michael looked at the message for a long moment. Then he typed, "To find my daughter." Chapter 3. The War Nobody Wins. The address hadn't been hard to find. Sophia's name was listed in the phone directory, linked to a small apartment complex in a neighborhood Michael had never had reason to visit before. Not poor, but not the kind of place someone with his wealth would ever end up. Working class, practical, the kind of place where people raise children on tight budgets and big hearts. Michael sat in the Uber across the street, staring at the building. It was early evening now, the sun starting to sink toward the horizon. Somewhere in one of those apartments, his daughter was probably having dinner, probably asking Julian why the fancy crying man had ruined their park day, probably being comforted and told everything was okay when everything was very much not okay. "You getting out, man?" the driver asked. "Meter's still running." Michael handed him a bill that was way too much and climbed out. His tuxedo was wrinkled now, the boutonniere wilted. He probably looked insane, showing up at their door like this. But he'd spent 5 years not knowing his daughter existed. He wasn't waiting another day. He found their apartment number and knocked before he could talk himself out of it. The door opened to reveal Julian, still in his teacher clothes from earlier, but with a dish towel over his shoulder. The moment he saw Michael, his expression hardened into something dangerous. "You have got to be kidding me. I need to talk to Sophia." "No." Julian started to close the door, but Michael put his hand against it. "Please. I know I have no right, but please, 5 minutes." "5 minutes?" Julian's laugh was bitter. "You want 5 minutes after showing up out of nowhere and detonating our entire lives? You want 5 minutes to what, Michael? Stake your claim? Assert your rights?" "Julian, who's at the door?" Sophia's voice came from inside the apartment, and then she appeared behind him, her face going pale when she saw Michael. "Oh, God." "It's fine," Julian said, not taking his eyes off Michael. "I'm handling it." "I'm not here to fight." Michael held up his hands. "I just need to understand what happened, how this happened, why you never told me." Sophia looked at Julian, some silent communication passing between them, and then she sighed. "Let him in," she said quietly. "Soph, let him in. We were going to have to deal with this eventually." Julian stepped aside with obvious reluctance, and Michael entered their home. It was small but warm, with children's drawings taped to the walls and toys organized in colorful bins. A small kitchen table was set for dinner. 3 places. He'd interrupted their family meal. "Philip's in her room," Sophia said, reading his thoughts, "and she's going to stay there. You don't talk to her tonight, do you understand? This is already confusing enough for a 4-year-old. "I understand." They stood in an awkward triangle in the living room. Julian crossed his arms, clearly ready to throw Michael out at the first wrong word. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, defensive and scared. "The wedding?" she finally said. "Did you—" "There was no wedding. I told Heather everything. She called it off." Sophia's eyes widened. "Michael, don't apologize for that. That's on me, not you." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to organize thoughts that wouldn't organize. "I need you to tell me what happened after we broke up. All of it." Sophia looked at Julian again, and this time he nodded slightly, giving permission or support or both. "I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after we ended things," she began, her voice quiet. "I tried to call you. Your number was disconnected. I went to your apartment. The landlord said you'd moved out without leaving a forwarding address. I tried to find you through mutual friends, but you'd cut everyone off." "I was hurt," Michael said. "I wanted a clean break." "You got one." Sophia's voice had an edge now. "I kept trying for weeks. Finally found you on LinkedIn. You'd raised money for your company. There was an article about you in TechCrunch. They asked if you were seeing anyone, if you wanted a family. You said you were married to your company, that kids weren't in the cards, that you needed to stay focused." Michael remembered that interview, remembered saying those things, remembered meaning them at the time. "So I made a choice," Sophia continued. "I chose not to trap you, not to be the baby mama who showed up demanding support from a man who'd made it clear he didn't want domestic life. I chose to protect my dignity and raise my child alone. Except you didn't raise her alone. Michael looked at Julian. You had help. I met Sophia when Philip was 18 months old, Julian said, his voice tight. She was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, doing everything she could to give that baby a good life. I fell in love with both of them. I proposed not despite Philip, but because of her. I wanted to be her father. And you adopted her? Yes, legally, completely. Changed her last name to mine. I'm on her birth certificate as her father. That little girl is mine in every way that matters. Except biology. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Julian took a step forward, and Michael saw murder in his eyes. You want to talk about biology? Fine. Let's talk about it. You share DNA with Philip. Congratulations. That makes you a sperm donor, not a father. I'm the one who taught her to tie her shoes. I'm the one who sings her to sleep when she has nightmares. I'm the one who holds her when she's scared. What are you? Her biological father. Her nothing. Julian's voice rose. You were nothing to her this morning, and you're nothing to her now. The only thing that's changed is that you know she exists, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy the family we built. I'm not trying to destroy anything. Then what are you doing here, Michael? Sophia's voice cut through. What do you want from us? It was the question Michael hadn't been able to answer for himself. What did he want? To be Philip's father? To replace Julian? To have a relationship with a child who didn't know him and didn't want to know him? I want to know my daughter. Why? Julian demanded. Because suddenly your DNA matters? Because you feel guilty? Because you want to salve your conscience for abandoning her mother? I didn't abandon anyone. I didn't know. Because you didn't want to know, Julian was shouting now. You made it impossible for Sophia to reach you because you wanted a clean break. You got exactly what you asked for, and now you're mad about the consequences. That's enough. Sophia stepped between them, her hands up. Both of you, stop. Philip can hear you. They fell silent immediately. From down the hall, Michael could hear a small voice calling out, Daddy, why is everyone yelling? Julian shot Michael a look that clearly said, see what you did, then called back, everything's fine, baby. The grown-ups are just having a discussion. Go back to your dinosaurs. Okay, Daddy. The easy trust in that small voice broke something in Michael's chest. I missed 4 years of her life, he said quietly. 4 years I can never get back. And I know that's my fault for making myself unreachable. I know I have no right to anything, but she's my daughter, and I just found out she exists, and I can't just walk away and pretend I don't know. Can you understand that? Sophia's eyes were wet now. I understand, but Michael, she's 4 years old. She doesn't understand complicated adult situations. She has a daddy who she loves and trusts. You can't just insert yourself into her life and expect her to understand that you're her biological father. That's terrifying for a child that age. So what am I supposed to do? Just accept that I'll never know her? I don't know. Sophia's frustration boiled over. I don't have answers for you, Michael. I made the best choice I could 5 years ago with the information I had. You made yourself unreachable. I chose dignity over disruption. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have tried harder. But I can't change the past any more than you can. Julian put his arm around Sophia, a gesture that was both protective and territorial. We need you to leave now. This is too much for one day. Philip is already confused about what happened in the park. We need time to process this, to figure out what we're going to tell her to... He stopped, his jaw tight. We need time. I'm not just going to disappear. We're not asking you to. Sophia's voice was tired. But we're asking you to give us space, to let us figure out how to handle this without you showing up at our door demanding answers. I have a right. You have DNA, Julian interrupted. That's it. Everything else you're going to have to earn. And you don't earn it by showing up in your tuxedo and making demands. Michael wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the idea that his biological connection to Philip meant nothing. But standing in their small living room, seeing the family photos on the walls where Julian was the only father Philip had ever known, he realized they were right. He had to earn this. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, I'll give you space. But I want to talk to a lawyer. I want to know what my rights are." The moment the word lawyer left his mouth, the temperature in the room dropped. "Of course you do," Julian said bitterly. "Of course you're going to lawyer up and try to take our daughter away." "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." Julian's voice was hard. "You're rich, Michael. You can afford the best lawyers in Seattle. You can drag us through court, make this a legal battle we can't afford to fight. Is that what you want? To use your money to force your way into Philip's life?" "I just want to know what I'm entitled to." "You're entitled to nothing," Sophia said, and the steel in her voice surprised him. "But if you want to go to court, if you want to make this a legal war, then fine. I'll get a lawyer too. And Philip will be the one who pays the price, watching her parents fight over her like she's property. Is that what you want for your daughter?" Michael looked at her, at the woman he'd loved and lost, and saw that she meant every word. "No," he admitted, "that's not what I want." "Then what do you want, Michael?" Sophia asked again, softer this time. "Really, what do you actually want?" And Michael realized he didn't have a good answer. He wanted his daughter, but she already had a father. He wanted to be part of Philip's life, but barging in would only hurt her. He wanted to turn back time and make different choices, but that was impossible. "I want a chance," he said finally. "I want a chance to know her, to be part of her life. I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway." Sophia and Julian exchanged another long look. Finally, Sophia sighed. "We need to talk to someone," she said. "A child psychologist or family therapist or someone who knows how to handle situations like this. Because I have no idea how to introduce a biological father to a 4-year-old who already has a dad she loves. I don't know how to do this without traumatizing her." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. "Okay," Michael said. "Okay. We'll talk to a professional. We'll figure this out the right way." Julian didn't look happy, but he nodded slightly. "You need to leave now," Sophia said. "And Michael, don't show up here unannounced again. Don't try to see Philip without talking to us first. And don't contact a lawyer until we've at least tried to figure this out like adults. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Then go. Please." Michael walked to the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm sorry, to both of you. I'm sorry for all of it." Sophia just nodded, her face unreadable. Julian said nothing at all. Michael left their apartment and stood in the hallway, hearing the sound of the lock clicking into place behind him. Through the door, he could hear Philip calling for her daddy, hear Julian's soothing response, hear Sophia's quiet voice joining in. A family, whole and complete without him. Michael walked out into the parking lot and called an Uber. While he waited, his phone buzzed with messages he'd been ignoring all evening. Ryder asking where he was, his mother saying they needed to talk, Knox demanding to know what the hell had happened at the cathedral. And one message from Heather: "I hope your daughter is worth it." Michael looked at that message for a long time. Then he typed back, "She is. And I'm sorry." Heather didn't respond. The Uber arrived and Michael climbed in, giving the driver his penthouse address. As they pulled away from the apartment complex, he looked back and saw a light on in what he thought might be Philip's room. His daughter was in there, probably being tucked into bed, probably being read a story by the man she called Daddy, probably feeling safe and loved and completely unaware that her entire family structure had just become infinitely more complicated and Michael had no idea how to fix any of it. Chapter 4. 5 years of silence, 5 minutes of truth. Geneva. Pepper's house in the Madison Park neighborhood was exactly the kind of place Michael had grown up in, expensive but not ostentatious, tasteful but warm. When he arrived the next morning, after a sleepless night in his penthouse, his mother was waiting on the front porch with coffee already poured. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting. "Thanks, Mom. Sit." Michael sat. Geneva handed him the coffee and settled into the chair beside him, looking out at the perfectly manicured garden that she maintained herself despite being able to afford a team of landscapers. "I spent most of last night on the phone with Heather's mother," Geneva said. "Vivian is devastated, furious at you, but devastated for her daughter." "I know. Heather's handling it better than expected. She told Vivian that she's actually relieved. Better to know now than after 10 years and 3 kids that she was your consolation prize." The words stung, even second-hand. "She wasn't—" "Don't," Geneva's voice was sharp. "Don't insult both of us by pretending Heather was wrong. You proposed to her because she was safe, because she was there, because you thought you could build a good life on top of buried grief. That's not love, Michael. That's cowardice." Michael had nothing to say to that because it was true. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee in the morning sunshine while Michael's life continued to implode. "Tell me about the little girl," Geneva finally said, her voice gentler. "Tell me about my granddaughter." So Michael did. He told her about seeing Philip at the crosswalk, about her purple dinosaur shirt and light-up sneakers. He told her about the way she'd called Julian Daddy with such complete trust. He told her about going to their apartment, about the family photos on the walls, about the obvious love that existed in that small space. Geneva listened without interruption, her face thoughtful. "And Sophia?" she asked when he finished. "How is she?" "Scared, angry. I don't know. She's built a life without me, and now I'm threatening to destroy it." "Are you?" Michael looked at his mother. "What? Are you threatening to destroy it? Or are you trying to figure out how to be part of it?" Geneva set down her coffee cup. "There's a difference, Michael. One is about your ego and your rights. The other is about that little girl, and what's actually best for her. I want to know my daughter." "Why?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean, why? She's my child." "Biologically, yes, but she already has a father, a man who's been there since she was a baby, who loves her, who she trusts. So I ask again, why do you want to know her? Is it because you actually want to be a father? Or is it because your pride is hurt that another man is raising your biological child?" Michael opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Was that what this was? Wounded pride, or genuine desire to be a father? "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I think it's both. I think I want to know her because she's mine, but also because when I saw her, I felt something I wasn't expecting, like a piece of me I didn't know was missing suddenly clicked into place." Geneva nodded slowly. "That's honest, at least. But Michael, wanting to be a father and being ready to be one are 2 different things. Philip is 4 years old. She doesn't need another adult making her life complicated because of their feelings. She needs stability and love and consistency. Can you give her that?" "I don't know." "Then you need to figure it out before you push any further." Geneva reached over and took his hand. "I'm going to tell you something I've never told you before. When your father left, you were 3 years old, about Philip's age." Michael went very still. His mother never talked about his father. "He came back when you were 7, Geneva continued, "showed up out of nowhere with gifts and apologies and demands for visitation rights. Said he'd made a mistake leaving, that he wanted to be your father." "I don't remember that." "I know because I said no." Geneva's voice was firm. I told him that he'd given up his right to disrupt your life when he walked out, that you had stability and routine and you didn't need him showing up whenever it was convenient for him. He threatened to take me to court. I told him to try. Michael stared at his mother. What happened? He disappeared again. Turns out he didn't actually want to be a father. He just wanted to assuage his guilt. And I'll be damned if I let him use you to make himself feel better. She squeezed his hand. The point is, Michael, you need to search your soul and figure out what you actually want. Because if you're doing this for yourself, for your ego, for your guilt, then you need to walk away and let that little girl have the stable family she deserves. And if I'm doing it because I actually want to be her father, then you have a long, hard road ahead of you, because you don't just get to waltz in and claim the title. You have to earn it, every single day. They sat there together, mother and son, while the weight of that settled. Sophia wants to talk to a family therapist, Michael said finally. Someone who can help us figure out how to handle this. Good, that's smart. Geneva stood up, brushing invisible wrinkles from her slacks. And while you're figuring that out, there's something else you need to do. What? You need to go see Heather. Apologize properly, not because you want forgiveness, but because she deserves to hear that you know how badly you hurt her. Michael's stomach twisted at the thought. Mom, I don't think she wants to see me. Probably not, but you're going to do it anyway. You're going to face the consequences of your choices instead of running away like you did with Sophia 5 years ago. Geneva's voice left no room for argument. You're going to start acting like a man instead of a boy who runs when things get hard. She was right. Michael knew she was right. Okay, he said quietly. I'll go see her. Good. And Michael, when you do, leave your excuses at the door. Don't try to justify what you did. Just acknowledge the hurt and let her have her anger. Michael drove to Heather's apartment in the early afternoon, his stomach in knots. He'd texted first, asking if she'd be willing to see him. Her response had been short. Fine, 2 p.m., don't be late. When she opened the door, she was in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked nothing like the polished lawyer he'd been engaged to, and somehow more herself than he'd seen her in months. Come in, she said without preamble. The apartment was littered with wedding gifts that hadn't been returned yet. Boxes stacked in corners, elegant packaging mocking the celebration that never happened. Daphne's helping me send these back, Heather said, following his gaze. Most people have been understanding. Some think I'm insane for calling it off. My Aunt Carol sent me a very long email about how all men have baggage, and I should have worked through it. I'm sorry. Are you? Heather turned to face him, and her eyes were hard. Or are you just sorry you got caught? Sorry that your perfect plan to bury the past blew up in your face? I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I proposed when I wasn't fully present. I'm sorry I wasted your time and made you think we could build something real when I was still carrying ghosts. Heather studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. I believe you mean that. She sat down on the couch, gesturing for him to sit in the chair across from her. But you should know something, Michael. I'm not devastated like everyone thinks I should be. I'm angry, yes. I'm humiliated, but I'm also relieved. Relieved. I was settling, she admitted. I loved you, but I also knew on some level that you weren't all in. I told myself it was enough, that love would grow, that we'd build something good together. But deep down, I always knew there was someone else in your head, and I was willing to live with that ghost rather than be alone. She laughed bitterly. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic. It's human. Maybe. But I deserve better than human. I deserve someone who chooses me first, not someone who settles for me because his first choice is unavailable. Heather's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. So, thank you, actually. for showing me that before we went through with it. Before I spent 10 years wondering why you never looked at me the way you probably looked at her." Michael felt the full weight of what he'd done settle on his shoulders. "Have you talked to her?" Heather asked. "Sophia? Last night I went to her apartment. And? She's married to the man who adopted Philip. They're a family, and I'm the ghost who showed up to haunt them." "Good. Now you know how it feels." Heather's voice was sharp, but then she sighed. "I'm sorry. That was petty." "You're entitled to petty." They sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. "What are you going to do?" Heather finally asked. "About your daughter?" "I don't know. Sophia wants to talk to a family therapist, figure out how to handle this without traumatizing Philip." "That's smart. Kids don't need to be caught in adult drama." Heather paused. "You know, if you'd told me about Sophia before, if you'd been honest about still having feelings for her, I probably would have ended things myself, but I would have respected you for the honesty. Instead, you let me plan a whole wedding while you were emotionally unavailable. I know, and I'm sorry. I really, truly am sorry." Heather nodded. "I know you are, and eventually I'll forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry this anger around forever. But right now I need you to leave and not contact me for a while. Can you do that?" "Yes." Michael stood to go, but Heather's voice stopped him at the door. "Michael, I hope you figure out how to be a good father to that little girl. I hope you don't run from this like you ran from everything else, because she deserves better than a father who shows up when it's convenient and disappears when it's hard." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "I won't run," Michael said quietly. "We'll see." Michael left Heather's apartment, feeling even worse than when he'd arrived. But that was the point, wasn't it? Facing consequences, acknowledging hurt, not running from the damage he'd caused. His phone rang as he reached his car. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Pepper, this is Dr. Iris Madden. I'm a child psychologist. Sophia Dunkley and Julian Whitmore asked me to reach out to you about setting up a consultation regarding your daughter Philip." Michael's heart rate picked up. Yes, I'd like that. "I have an opening tomorrow at 10. Would that work for you? It would be all four of us, you, Sophia, Julian, and myself." "I'll be there." Dr. Madden gave him the address and hung up. Michael sat in his car, staring at the phone. Tomorrow. Tomorrow he'd start figuring out how to be a father to a daughter who didn't know him and didn't want to know him. The thought was terrifying. But for the first time since seeing Philip at that crosswalk, Michael felt like he was moving forward instead of just destroying everything in his path. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Chapter 5. The Paternity Storm. Dr. Iris Madden's office was located in a small professional building in Capitol Hill, the kind of place that screamed therapy with its soothing earth tones and abstract art that was meant to be calming. Michael arrived early, his stomach churning with nerves, and sat in the waiting room reading the same magazine page over and over without absorbing a single word. When Sophia and Julian arrived, the temperature in the room dropped. Julian barely looked at him. Sophia gave him a tight nod and then took a seat as far away from him as the small waiting room allowed. They sat in awkward silence until a woman in her late 50s opened the door to the inner office. She had kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Good morning, I'm Dr. Madden. Please come in." The office was set up with a small couch and 3 individual chairs arranged in a circle. Michael noticed the strategic placement. No one sitting across from anyone else, no power positions, just a circle of uncomfortable adults trying to figure out how not to destroy a child's life. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Madden began once they were settled. "I know this is a difficult situation. Before we start, I want to establish some ground rules. This is a safe space for everyone to speak honestly. We're not here to assign blame or litigate the past. We're here to figure out what's best for Philip. Can everyone agree to that?" They all nodded, though Julian's was reluctant. Good. Now, I've spoken with Sophia and Julian about the situation, but Michael, I'd like to hear your perspective. Can you tell me how you're feeling about all of this? Michael looked at Sophia, then Julian, then back at Dr. Madden. I'm overwhelmed, he admitted. I found out I had a daughter less than 2 days ago. I missed 4 years of her life, and she already has a father who loves her and who she loves. I don't know where I fit in all of this, or if I fit at all. Do you want to fit? Dr. Madden asked. Yes, but I don't want to hurt her. That's a good starting point. Dr. Madden turned to Julian. Julian, you've been Philip's father since she was 18 months old. How are you feeling about Michael's sudden appearance? Julian's jaw was tight, threatened, angry, like someone's trying to take my daughter away. I'm not, Michael started, but Dr. Madden held up a hand. Let him finish. Julian continued, his voice rough with emotion. I've been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every milestone. I chose to be her father. And now he shows up because of biology, and suddenly I'm supposed to just make room for him. How is that fair to Philip? How is that fair to me? It's not fair, Dr. Madden said gently. But life rarely is. The question isn't about fairness. It's about what's best for Philip. She turned to Sophia. You've been quiet. What are you feeling? Sophia's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Guilty. I made a choice 5 years ago not to tell Michael about the pregnancy. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have tried harder to reach him. And now Philip is the one who has to deal with the consequences of my choice. Do you regret that choice? Dr. Madden asked. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. If I'd told him, if I'd found a way to reach him, maybe he would have stepped up. Or maybe he would have felt trapped. Maybe he would have resented me and Philip for ruining his career plans. I'll never know. All I know is that I did what I thought was right at the time with the information I had. And now? Now I have a daughter who has a daddy she loves and a biological father who wants to know her, and I have no idea how to navigate this without hurting her. Dr. Madden nodded thoughtfully. Let me ask all of you something. When you think about Philip's future, what do you hope for her? Sophia spoke first. I want her to feel loved and secure. I want her to grow up confident and happy. I want the same thing, Julian added. I want her to know she's wanted, that she has a family who chose her. Michael swallowed hard. I want her to have every opportunity. I want her to know her biological father if she wants to. But more than that, I want her to be okay. And if that means staying out of her life, then I'll do that. That's the first unselfish thing you've said, Julian muttered. Julian, Dr. Madden said gently, remember what we discussed about staying productive. Julian nodded stiffly. Dr. Madden leaned forward. Here's what I'm going to tell you, and it may not be what you want to hear. Philip is 4 years old. At this age, children form strong attachments to primary caregivers. Julian is her father in every way that matters to her developmentally. Introducing Michael as another father figure right now could cause significant confusion and anxiety. Michael felt his heart sink. However, Dr. Madden continued, that doesn't mean Michael can't have a relationship with Philip. It just means we need to be very strategic and careful about how we introduce that relationship. Children can understand complex family structures if they're presented in age-appropriate ways. So what are you suggesting? Sophia asked. I'm suggesting a very gradual introduction. Michael doesn't suddenly become dad or even biological father. He becomes a friend of the family, someone who Philip sees occasionally in structured, supervised settings. Over time, as she gets older and can understand more complex concepts, you can explain who Michael is. But right now, we protect her attachment to Julian while slowly creating space for Michael. Julian looked skeptical. And what's to stop him from deciding that's not enough? What's to stop him from going to court and demanding custody? All eyes turned to Michael. "I won't do that," Michael said quietly. "I won't put Philip through a custody battle. Dr. Madden is right. Julian is her father. I don't want to replace him. I just want a chance to know her." "Can you put that in writing?" Julian asked bluntly. "Can you sign something saying you won't seek custody?" "Julian," Sophia said, but he cut her off. "No, I need to know. I need to know that he's not going to change his mind in 6 months, when being the fun uncle isn't enough anymore. I need legal protection." Dr. Madden looked at Michael. "Would you be willing to sign an agreement saying you won't seek custody or formal visitation rights?" Michael thought about it, thought about his lawyers who would tell him he was insane to sign away his parental rights, thought about the fact that legally he probably had a strong case for at least partial custody. Then he thought about Philip crying in the park, afraid of the fancy crying man, thought about the family photos on Sophia's walls where Julian was the only father Philip had ever known. "Yes," he said, "I'll sign it. But I want it to say that I can see her regularly. Not as a father, but as a family friend. And when she's old enough to understand, I want the right to tell her who I am." "That seems reasonable," Dr. Madden said, looking at Sophia and Julian. "Would you agree to those terms?" Sophia and Julian exchanged a long look. Finally, Sophia nodded. "We'll agree to supervised visits," she said carefully. "Once a week to start, in public places. You don't pick her up alone. You don't take her anywhere without one of us present. And if at any point we feel like this is hurting her, the visits stop." "Agreed." "And you'll see a therapist yourself," Julian added, "to work through whatever you need to work through about missing 4 years of her life. Because I'm not having you use Philip as emotional support for your guilt." It was harsh, but not unfair. "Agreed," Dr. Madden smiled. "This is good. This is productive. I'm going to recommend that we meet again in a week to check in on how the first few visits go, and I'd like to meet with Philip separately to assess how she's handling all of this." "What will you tell her?" Sophia asked. "I'll tell her that I'm a feelings doctor who helps kids talk about confusing things. I won't mention Michael directly unless she brings him up. I just want to gauge her general emotional state and see if there are any signs of distress." They talked logistics for another half hour, times for visits, places that would be appropriate, how to introduce Michael without overwhelming Philip, what to say if she asked questions. By the time they stood to leave, Michael felt like he'd run a marathon, but he also felt something else: hope. It wasn't much, and it came with 1,000 conditions, but it was a chance. In the parking lot, Sophia stopped him as Julian walked to their car. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for agreeing to this, for not fighting us. I meant what I said in there. I don't want to hurt her." Sophia studied his face. "I believe you. But Michael, if you're going to do this, you have to be all in. You can't show up for a few weeks and then disappear when it gets hard or when you get busy with work. Philip is 4. She won't understand that. She'll just think she did something wrong. I won't disappear. You did before." The words stung, but they were true. "I was different then. I was running from things I didn't know how to face, but I'm not running anymore." Sophia nodded slowly. "We'll see." She walked back to Julian's car, and Michael watched them drive away. His phone rang. His business partner, Knox. "Where the hell have you been?" Knox demanded without preamble. "The board is freaking out. We have investors asking questions about the cancelled wedding. We have deals that need your signature. You can't just disappear, Michael." "I know, I'm sorry. I'll be in tomorrow." "Tomorrow? Michael, we needed you yesterday. We needed you last week. What the hell is going on with you?" Michael looked at the building where he'd just signed away his parental rights for a chance to know his daughter as a family friend. "I'm figuring out how to be a father," he said quietly. "What? Michael? You don't have kids? I do, actually. I found out 2 days ago, and I'm choosing to be present for her, even if that means the company has to wait. There was a long silence on the other end. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. I'll be in tomorrow to handle whatever needs handling. But Knox, my schedule is going to look different from now on, because I have a daughter who needs to know I won't disappear on her. Michael, I'll see you tomorrow. He hung up before Knox could argue further. Michael sat in his car, looking at his phone, at the messages from his lawyer asking about the situation, from his mother checking in, from Ryder wanting to know if he was okay. He texted his lawyer, "Cancel the consultation. I'm not pursuing custody." He texted his mother, "We're trying supervised visits. It's going to be okay." He texted Ryder, "I think I just agreed to the hardest thing I've ever done." Then he drove home to his empty penthouse that suddenly felt hollow and started researching what 4-year-olds like to do, because in 3 days he had his first official visit with his daughter, and he had no idea how to talk to a 4-year-old who thought he was just some random fancy crying man. Chapter 6. The Saturday Wars. The Seattle Children's Museum had seemed like a safe choice. Public, full of activities for kids, impossible to mess up too badly. Michael arrived 30 minutes early, which meant he spent half an hour standing in the parking lot, trying not to throw up from nerves. When Sophia's car pulled up with Julian driving, Michael saw Philip in her car seat in the back, chattering away about something. She looked happy, unburdened by the adult complications swirling around her. Sophia got out first, then helped Philip out of her car seat. The little girl was wearing overalls with a T-Rex on the front and those same light-up sneakers from the park. She saw Michael and stopped talking mid-sentence. "That's the fancy man from the park," she said to her mother. "Why is he here?" "Remember how Mommy and Daddy told you that we were going to spend some time with a friend today? This is Michael. He's a friend of ours, and he's going to come to the museum with us." Philip looked suspicious. "Why?" "Because he'd like to get to know you," Sophia said gently. "Is that okay?" Philip considered this, then shrugged. "Okay, but I want to see the dinosaurs first." "Dinosaurs sound perfect," Michael managed, his voice only slightly shaky. They walked into the museum together, this awkward group of 4. Julian kept his hand on Philip's shoulder, a gesture that was both protective and proprietary. Sophia walked between Michael and her family, a buffer zone. The dinosaur exhibit was in the basement. Philip ran ahead, her light-up shoes blinking with each step, and immediately pressed her face against a glass case containing fossilized bones. "Look, Mommy, it's a velociraptor claw." "That's so cool, baby." Philip turned to Michael, who'd stopped a respectful distance away. "Do you know about dinosaurs?" "A little bit," Michael admitted. "I know everything about dinosaurs. Daddy got me a whole book about them. It has pictures and facts and everything." She said it with the absolute confidence of a 4-year-old who'd memorized one picture book and thought she was an expert. "What's your favorite dinosaur?" Michael asked. Philip didn't hesitate. "Ankylosaurus, because it has armor and a club tail and it's basically invincible." "That's a good choice. What's your favorite?" Michael searched his brain for anything he knew about dinosaurs. "I always thought the Brachiosaurus was cool. It was really tall." Philip made a face. "That's boring. It just ate plants. Dinosaurs should be fierce." "Philip," Sophia said gently, "that's not polite." "But it's true, Mommy." "Plant eaters are boring." Michael couldn't help but smile. "You're right. That was a boring answer. How about the Spinosaurus? It was fierce and could swim." Philip's eyes lit up. "Daddy, did you hear? Michael knows about Spinosaurus." Julian nodded tightly. "That's nice, sweetheart." They moved through the exhibit, Philip leading the way and providing running commentary on every single display. She was smart, Michael realized. Really smart. She didn't just memorize facts. She asked questions, made connections, wanted to understand how things worked. At one point, she grabbed Michael's hand to pull him toward a particularly exciting display, then seemed to realize what she'd done and dropped it quickly, running back to Julian instead. "Sorry," she mumbled. "You don't have to be sorry, baby," Julian said, shooting Michael a look that clearly communicated back off. After the dinosaur exhibit, they moved to the water play area. Philip immediately started building an elaborate dam system, her tongue poking out in concentration as she stacked blocks and redirected water flow. "She's going to be an engineer," Sophia said quietly, watching her daughter work. "Or an architect," Julian added. "Last week she spent 2 hours building a city out of cardboard boxes." Michael watched Philip work, seeing the same stubborn focus he recognized from his own childhood. His mother used to say he'd get so absorbed in building things that he'd forget to eat. "Can I play?" a little boy about Philip's age asked, approaching the water table. Philip looked up. "Okay, but you have to follow the rules. The water has to go this way, and you can't knock down the dam." The boy nodded seriously and started helping. Within minutes, they were deep in collaboration, barely aware of the adults watching. "She's good with other kids," Michael observed. "She goes to a preschool 3 days a week," Sophia explained. "She loves it, comes home with stories about her friends every day." They stood there watching Philip play, and for a brief moment, it almost felt normal, like they were just 4 adults watching a child be a child. Then Philip ran over, soaking wet, and crashed into Julian's legs. "Daddy, did you see? We made a whole river system." "I saw, sweetie. You did great." She didn't run to Michael, didn't include him in her excitement. He was just the awkward adult standing to the side, not part of her world. After 2 hours, Philip was starting to get tired and cranky. She wanted to go to the gift shop, but Sophia said no, which resulted in the beginning of a tantrum. "But Mommy, I want the stuffed ankylosaurus." "We talked about this, Philip. You got a new toy last week. We're not buying another one today." "But I want it." "I know you want it, but the answer is no." Philip's face scrunched up, tears starting. Julian knelt down to her level. "Hey, remember what we talked about? When we want something but can't have it right now?" "We can put it on the wish list for later," Philip sniffled. "Exactly. So how about we take a picture of the ankylosaurus and add it to your birthday wish list?" Philip considered this, then nodded, wiping her eyes. Crisis averted. Michael had watched the whole interaction with something like awe. Julian had diffused a tantrum in 30 seconds flat with patience and a pre-established system. This was parenting, real parenting. Not the biological connection Michael had to Philip, but the day-to-day work of guiding a small person through big feelings. As they walked back to the parking lot, Philip walked between Sophia and Julian, holding both their hands. Michael trailed behind, feeling like the fifth wheel he essentially was. At the cars, Sophia turned to him. "Thank you for coming today. I think it went well." "Did it?" Michael couldn't help the doubt in his voice. "She barely talked to me after the dinosaur exhibit." "She's 4, Michael. She doesn't know you. It takes time to build trust with kids." Sophia's voice was gentle, but firm. "You did fine. You were patient. You didn't try to force interaction. That's exactly what she needs right now." "Same time next week?" Julian asked, though his tone made it clear it wasn't really a question. "Yes, same time." Philip was already strapped into her car seat, playing with a small dinosaur toy. As they prepared to drive away, she looked out the window at Michael. "Bye, Michael." "Bye, Philip." It was the smallest thing, just a goodbye, but it felt like a victory. Michael drove home replaying every moment of the visit. The way Philip had almost held his hand, the way she'd told him about the Spinosaurus, the way she'd said bye to him at the end. It wasn't much, but it was something. His phone rang. His mother. "How did it go?" "It was hard, Mom. She's amazing and smart and funny, and she has no idea who I am. She has parents who love her and a life that's complete without me. And you're going back next week? Yes. Good. That's what commitment looks like, Michael. Showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That night, Michael lay awake in his too-empty penthouse, thinking about a little girl who loved dinosaurs and called another man Daddy. Thinking about how Julian had known exactly how to calm her tantrum, how Sophia had known she needed to leave before she got too tired, how they moved together like a team that had been practicing for years. Because they had been. They'd been a team for Philip's entire life, and Michael was just a stranger trying to find a way in. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophia with a photo attachment. He opened it. It was Philip at bedtime, holding the dinosaur toy, with a caption, "She told Julian you were nice. She wants to know if you'll come to the museum again." Michael stared at that message for a long time. Then he typed back, "Tell her yes. Tell her I'll always come back." Sophia's response was immediate. "Don't make promises you can't keep." She's already had one person disappear. The words hit hard, but they were fair. "I won't disappear," Michael typed. "I promise." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "We'll see." Michael put down his phone and closed his eyes. We'll see. It wasn't trust, but it was a start. Chapter 7. The Kitchen Table Apocalypse. The supervised visits continued every Saturday for the next month. The aquarium, the zoo, the park. Each time, Philip warmed up to Michael a little more. She'd tell him about preschool, about her friends, about the chapter book Sophia was reading to her at bedtime. She'd grab his hand sometimes when she got excited, then remember herself and pull away. But she never called him anything other than Michael, and she never treated him differently than any other adult in her life. Which was why the Wednesday afternoon phone call from Sophia caught him completely off guard. "Can you come to dinner tomorrow night?" she asked without preamble. "At our place." Michael's heart rate picked up. In 4 weeks of Saturday visits, he'd never been invited to their home. "Is something wrong?" "No. Julian and I talked, and we think it's time to expand beyond the Saturday museum visits. We want Philip to see you in normal contexts. Family dinner seems like a good next step." "Okay, yes. What time?" 6. "And Michael, don't bring anything. Just come." He spent the next day anxious, checking the clock every 15 minutes at work. Knox noticed and cornered him in his office. "You've been distracted for weeks. The investors are asking questions. We need you focused." "I know. I'm sorry." "Are you, though?" Knox's frustration was clear. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've mentally checked out of this company. The company you built. The company that made you who you are." Michael looked at his business partner, at the spreadsheets on his desk, at the view from his penthouse office. "I used to think this company was who I am," he said quietly. "But I was wrong. It's what I do. Who I am is a father trying to figure out how to be present for a daughter who doesn't know me." Knox stared at him. "You're serious? You're actually choosing a kid you didn't know existed 6 weeks ago over the company we spent a decade building?" "I'm not choosing one over the other. I'm just rebalancing my priorities." "Bullshit. Your priorities have completely shifted, and the company is suffering for it." Michael knew Knox was right. He'd been leaving early, missing meetings, delegating things he used to handle personally. The IPO they'd been planning was delayed. Key decisions were stuck, waiting for his approval. "What do you want me to do, Knox? Abandon my daughter to focus on profit margins? I want you to figure out if you can actually do both, because right now you're half-assing everything." The words stung, because they were true. "I'll do better," Michael promised, "but I'm not stepping back from Philip, so if that's a problem—" "It's not a problem, it's reality." Knox headed for the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is admirable. I just hope you can actually pull it off without destroying everything else in the process." Michael sat in his office after Knox left, staring at the same spreadsheets, feeling the weight of impossible choices. At 6 that evening, he stood outside Sophia and Julian's apartment with his heart hammering. He could hear Philip's voice inside, singing something about dinosaurs. Julian answered the door. He didn't smile, but he stepped aside to let Michael in. "Shoes off," he said simply. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Sophia was in the kitchen, and Philip was sitting at the table coloring, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Michael's here," Sophia called out. Philip looked up and smiled. It was the first time she'd smiled at him, unprompted. "Hi, Michael. Want to see my drawing?" "I'd love to." He knelt beside her chair and looked at the paper. It was a family picture, 3 stick figures, carefully labeled. Mommy, Daddy, Philip, no 4th figure. "It's beautiful," Michael said, ignoring the ache in his chest. Dinner was spaghetti, which Philip ate enthusiastically, getting sauce all over her face. Conversation was stilted at first, all 4 of them trying too hard to act normal. But then, Philip started talking about her day at preschool, about how her friend Mason had brought a real butterfly cocoon for show and tell, and how the class was going to watch it turn into a butterfly. "That's called metamorphosis," Julian explained. "Metamorphosis," Philip repeated carefully. "The caterpillar makes itself a sleeping bag and then turns into a butterfly." "That's exactly right, sweetheart." Michael listened to them talk, watched the easy flow of their conversation, the shorthand that came from years of shared meals and bedtime stories. After dinner, Philip asked if she could watch 1 episode of her show before bath time. Sophia agreed, and Philip ran to turn on the TV, which left the 3 adults alone in the kitchen. "Coffee," Sophia offered. "Please." They sat at the small kitchen table, and the awkwardness returned. "She's doing well," Dr. Madden had reported in their last session. "No signs of distress. She talks about Michael who comes on Saturdays like he's a friendly acquaintance. She doesn't seem confused or upset." Now, sitting in their kitchen, Julian spoke. "We need to talk about what happens next." Michael's stomach tightened. "Okay. You've been consistent with the Saturday visits. Philip seems comfortable with you. But she's getting older. She's going to start asking questions soon." Julian's jaw was tight. "Questions about who you are and why you're always around." "What do you want to tell her?" Michael asked carefully. Sophia answered, "The truth. Age-appropriate truth. We tell her that before Daddy Julian, there was another person who helped make her, that you're her biological father." "And what happens after we tell her that?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "She might not care. She might be confused. She might ask why you weren't around before." "What will you tell her?" "That we didn't know how to find each other, that grown-ups make mistakes sometimes, that you want to know her now." Sophia's voice was firm. "What we won't tell her is that I kept her from you. She doesn't need that burden." "Even though it's true, the truth is complicated," Julian cut in. "The truth is, you made yourself unreachable. The truth is, Sophia made a choice with the information she had. The truth is, I stepped in and became her father. Which truth do we tell a 5-year-old? She's almost 5? Michael realized he didn't even know when his daughter's birthday was. "June 5th, Sophia said quietly. "She'll be 5 in 3 months." Michael had missed 4 birthdays. Would miss her 5th too, probably. He was just the Saturday man who came to museums. "I want to be more than a visitor," he said suddenly. "I want to be part of her life, really part of it." "What does that look like to you?" Julian asked, his tone sharp. "I don't know. More than Saturdays. Maybe some weekday dinners. Maybe I could pick her up from preschool sometimes." "No." Julian's voice was flat. You don't get to pick her up alone. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Julian, Sophia started, but he cut her off. I'm serious, Soph. I've been patient with this whole thing. I've watched him spend time with my daughter, watched her start to trust him, but I'm not handing her over for solo time, not when we don't know if he's going to stick around. I'm going to stick around. You say that now. But what happens when this gets boring, when the novelty wears off, when you realize being a parent is hard and messy and not some heartwarming weekend activity? That's not fair, isn't it? Julian stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You've had 6 weeks of Saturday visits, 6 weeks of playing the fun uncle who shows up for museums and leaves before bedtime. You haven't dealt with tantrums. You haven't stayed up all night with a sick kid. You haven't had to discipline her or tell her no or deal with any of the hard parts. Because you won't let me. Because you haven't earned it yet. They were both standing now, voices raised. In the living room, Philip's show went silent. She'd turned it off and was listening. Sophia noticed and immediately lowered her voice. Both of you stop. Philip can hear you. They sat back down, but the tension remained. I want more time with her, Michael said quietly. Not to replace you, Julian, but to be part of her life. Is that really so impossible? Julian looked at Sophia, some silent communication passing between them. Julian and I have been talking, Sophia said carefully, about our marriage. Michael's stomach dropped. We love each other, but we've been struggling since you showed up. Julian feels like he's fighting to keep his place as Philip's father. I feel caught between the two of you, and we're taking it out on each other. So you're separating? Michael couldn't keep the shock from his voice. No, Julian said firmly, we're not. But we're in couples therapy trying to work through this, because your appearance disrupted our family, and we're trying to figure out how to absorb that disruption without destroying ourselves in the process. Michael felt like he'd been punched. He'd been so focused on his relationship with Philip, he hadn't considered how his presence was affecting Sophia and Julian's marriage. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to cause problems between you. Maybe not intentionally, Sophia said. But you did, and we're dealing with it. But Michael, you need to understand, this isn't just about you and Philip. It's about all of us. Every choice we make affects everyone in this circle. From the living room, a small voice called out, Mommy, is Michael going to live with us now? All 3 adults froze. Sophia got up and went to the living room. Michael and Julian could hear her talking gently to Philip, but not the specific words. When she came back, her face was troubled. She heard us talking about you being around more. She asked if that meant you were moving in. What did you tell her? Michael asked. I told her no, that you have your own house, but that we might see you more often. Sophia sat back down heavily. This is exactly what Dr. Madden warned us about. We're confusing her. Maybe it's time to tell her, Julian said. Maybe she needs to understand who Michael actually is. She's 4, she's smart, and she's picking up on the tension. She deserves age-appropriate truth. Sophia looked at Michael. Are you ready for that conversation? Was he? Was he ready to tell his daughter that he was her biological father, that he'd missed 4 years of her life, that he wanted to be her dad even though she already had one? Yes, he said, because what else could he say? They called Philip back to the kitchen. She climbed into Sophia's lap, sensing this was important. Baby, we need to talk to you about something, Sophia began. You know how you were made, right? How babies happen? Philip nodded seriously. The seed and the egg make a baby in the mommy's tummy. Right. Well, remember we talked about how sometimes the person who helps make the baby isn't the same person who raises the baby. Another nod. Michael helped make you. He's your biological father. That means you have his eyes and his smile and some other things from him. But Daddy Julian is the one who raises you, who loves you, who's your daddy in all the important ways. Philip looked at Michael with new eyes. Then she looked at Julian. So I have two daddies? Sort of, Sophia said carefully. Julian is your daddy. Michael is your biological father. Some kids have one parent, some have two, some have more. You're lucky because you have people who care about you. Philip processed this for a moment. Do I have to call him Daddy? No, baby. You can keep calling him Michael. Okay. She seemed satisfied with this answer. Then she looked at Michael. Did you want to be my daddy? The question was so direct, so innocent, it took his breath away. I didn't know you existed, he said honestly. But the moment I found out about you, I wanted to know you. I wanted to be part of your life. Why weren't you around before? There it was, the question he'd been dreading. I made mistakes, he said simply. I wasn't there when I should have been. But I'm here now, and I'm going to keep being here. Philip nodded slowly, absorbing this. Can I still call Julian Daddy? Of course, sweetie. Julian's voice was rough. Okay. Can I go back to my show now? Just like that, the biggest conversation of all their lives was over for her. She'd gotten her answers, processed them through her 4-year-old logic, and moved on. The adults sat in stunned silence. That went better than I expected, Sophia finally said. She didn't even seem that interested, Michael observed. She's 4, Julian reminded him. To her, this is just another piece of information about her life, like how her friend Mason's parents are divorced, or how her teacher has 2 mommies instead of a mommy and daddy. Kids accept these things easier than adults do. Michael watched Philip through the doorway, settled back in front of her show, like nothing momentous had just happened. So what now? He asked. Sophia and Julian exchanged another look. Now we let it sink in, Sophia said. We answer her questions as they come up, and we keep doing what we're doing. Supervised visits, family dinners, building trust slowly. But no solo time, Julian added. Not yet. Michael nodded. It wasn't what he wanted, but it was more than he'd had before. As he left that night, Philip called out from the couch. Bye, Michael. See you Saturday. Not bye, biological father. Not bye, second daddy. Just Michael. And somehow, that felt right. Chapter 8. The Collapse Before Breakthrough. 3 months passed. 3 months of Saturday visits that became Wednesday dinners too. 3 months of Philip slowly, gradually accepting Michael as a fixture in her life. She'd tell him about preschool, show him her drawings, ask him to play dinosaurs with her. But she never called him Dad, never treated him differently than she treated any other adult in her life. And Michael was starting to realize that might never change. He was sitting in Dr. Madden's office for his individual therapy session when she asked the question that had been circling in his head. What if this is all you get, Michael? What if Philip never sees you as a father figure? What if you're always just Michael who comes on Saturdays and Wednesdays? Michael stared at his hands. Then I guess that's what I am. And you'd be okay with that? No, but I'd accept it, because the alternative is not being in her life at all. Dr. Madden nodded approvingly. That's growth. 6 months ago you were ready to fight for custody. Now you're accepting the role Philip is willing to give you. It hurts, though, watching Julian be her father, watching her run to him when she's scared, call for him when she's sick. I'm just the guy who buys her museum tickets. Is that all you are? Michael thought about the previous Wednesday. Philip had asked him to help her build a block tower. They'd spent an hour creating an elaborate castle, and when it was finished, she'd shown it to Sophia and Julian with pride. Michael helped me make it, she'd said. Not daddy, not father, but she'd included him in her accomplishment. No, he admitted. I'm the guy she trusts enough to build with, who she tells stories to, who she's comfortable being herself around. That's not nothing. It's not fatherhood either. Michael, There are biological fathers who live in the same house as their kids who have less connection than you have with Philip. You're present, you're consistent, you're interested in her life. That matters. It did matter. But it still hurt. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sophia, her voice tight with panic. Philip's in the hospital. Michael's heart stopped. What happened? She had a fever this morning. We thought it was just a cold, but it spiked to over 103 this afternoon. The doctor wants to keep her overnight for observation. Which hospital? Seattle Children's. But Michael, you don't have to. I'm coming. He left work immediately, ignoring Knox's protests about a meeting with investors. None of that mattered. His daughter was in the hospital. When he arrived, he found Sophia and Julian in the pediatric ward waiting room. Sophia looked exhausted, still in her work scrubs from the medical billing company. Julian's face was grey with worry. "How is she?" Michael asked. "She's okay. The fever came down with medication. They're running tests to make sure it's nothing serious." Sophia's voice shook. "They think it's just a bad virus, but they want to watch her overnight." "Can I see her?" Sophia and Julian exchanged a look. "She's been asking for you," Sophia said quietly. "She wants her mommy and daddy and Michael." Michael's throat tightened. They walked to Philip's room together. She was in a hospital bed that looked way too big for her small body, an IV in her arm, looking small and scared. "Michael!" Her face lit up when she saw him. "You came!" "Of course I came, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "My head hurts, and my tummy, and I don't like the poke in my arm." She pointed at the IV with a trembling lip. "I know, but it's helping you feel better." Julian sat on one side of the bed, Sophia on the other. Michael stood at the foot, the outsider even here. But then Philip held out her hand toward him. "You can sit on the bed too. There's room." Michael looked at Julian, who nodded slightly. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Philip grabbed his hand with her free one. "I don't like hospitals," she whispered. "Nobody does, but the doctors are making sure you're okay. Will you stay?" Michael looked at Sophia, who nodded. "I'll stay as long as you need me to." Over the next few hours, various doctors and nurses came and went. Philip's fever stayed down. The tests came back showing just a virus that needed to run its course. She'd be fine in a few days, but the scare had shaken all of them. Around midnight, Philip finally fell asleep, still holding both Julian's hand and Michael's. Sophia had dozed off in the chair, exhausted from the adrenaline crash. Julian spoke quietly. "Thank you for coming." Michael looked at him surprised. "Of course I came. She's my daughter. Biologically, yes, but you could have stayed away. Could have said it wasn't your place." Julian looked at their daughter sleeping between them. "But you showed up. You keep showing up. I told you I wouldn't disappear." "I know, and I didn't believe you at first. I thought you'd get bored or overwhelmed or decide this was too hard." Julian's voice was rough. "But you've been here every single Saturday and Wednesday for 3 months. You've been patient with her. You haven't pushed for more than she can give. That's not nothing. It doesn't make me her father, though." "No, I'm her father." Julian said it without apology. "But Michael, you're something. I don't know what to call it yet. But you're something important to her." It was the closest thing to acceptance Julian had ever offered. They sat in silence, the two men who loved the same child, united in their worry. Around 2 in the morning, Geneva arrived. Sophia had texted her about Philip's hospitalization, and she'd driven straight over. "How is she?" Geneva whispered. "Sleeping. Fever's down. She's going to be fine." Geneva looked at the scene. Philip in the middle, holding both men's hands, Sophia asleep in the chair. "This is the strangest family I've ever seen," she observed. "Tell me about it," Julian muttered. but there was something almost warm in his voice. Philip was discharged the next afternoon with instructions to rest and drink fluids. As they prepared to leave, she looked up at Michael. "Will you come visit me while I'm sick?" "If your mum and dad say it's okay." Philip looked at Sophia and Julian expectantly. "You can come Thursday," Sophia said. "Bring soup from that place Philip likes." It was such a domestic request, such a family thing. "I'll be there." As Michael drove home that evening, he thought about Julian's words. "You're something." He wasn't Philip's father, might never be. But he was something. His phone rang. His mother. "How's Philip?" "She's okay, gonna be fine." "And how are you?" Michael thought about that. About sitting by his daughter's hospital bed holding her hand. About Julian acknowledging his place in Philip's life. About being trusted to bring soup. "I think I'm learning what it means to be present," he said finally, "even when I'm not the most important person in the room." Geneva was quiet for a moment. "That's called being a grown-up, Michael. Welcome to it." He laughed despite everything. "Yeah, it's harder than I thought. It always is." Thursday, Michael showed up at Sophia and Julian's apartment with soup and crackers and ginger ale. Philip was on the couch in her pajamas, wrapped in blankets, watching cartoons. Her face lit up when she saw him. "You brought soup." "Just like I promised." He sat with her while she ate, watching cartoons he didn't understand, listening to her explain the plot in elaborate detail. Julian was working from home in the bedroom. Sophia was doing laundry. It was boring, domestic, normal, and it was perfect. As he was leaving, Philip called out, "Michael?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Thank you for coming to the hospital. I was scared, but it was better with you there." Michael's throat tightened. "I'll always come when you need me." She smiled, satisfied, and turned back to her cartoons. In the kitchen, Sophia caught him before he left. "You're good with her," she said quietly. "Better than I thought you'd be." "What did you think I'd be?" "I don't know. Impatient, maybe. Frustrated that she doesn't worship you. But you've been nothing but patient. You let her set the pace. That's rare." "She's worth being patient for." Sophia smiled. "Yeah, she really is." As Michael drove home, he realized something had shifted. He'd stopped trying to be Philip's father and started just trying to be someone she could count on. It wasn't what he'd wanted 6 months ago, but it was real. And it was enough. Chapter 9. The accident that changed everything. It happened on a perfect Saturday. Michael had picked up Philip and Sophia for the Pacific Science Center. Julian was at a conference, so it was just the three of them. Philip sang about planets from her car seat, inventing half the words. "Jupiter is big and round. Saturn has the rings around." Sophia smiled. "Dinosaurs last week. Space this week. Next week, who knows?" "She's brilliant," Michael said. Pride warmed him. "Gets it from both of us," Sophia replied, then froze at the accidental truth. At a red light, Philip was explaining Mars's rusty dirt when the delivery truck barreled through the intersection. Impact, screaming metal, airbags, Philip's terrified scream. Then silence. Michael's ears rang, pain flared in his face, but only one thought, Philip. "Philip!" he twisted. "Baby, are you okay?" She was crying, conscious, a red welt rising on her temple. Her car seat had held, "Mommy!" Sophia was already out, yanking open the back door. "I'm here, baby. Stay still." Michael dialed 911 with shaking hands, voice steady only because it had to be. People gathered. Someone shouted at the dazed truck driver. Michael ignored them all. Sophia calmed Philip while Michael gave the dispatcher details. "Ambulance is coming," he told them. "I want Daddy," Philip sobbed. "I want Daddy Julian." Sophia climbed in with her. "We're calling him now." Michael met Julian's eyes through the ambulance window as it pulled away. He nodded once. "I've got this." He called Julian. "Accident," Truck ran the light. Philip hit her head, conscious, talking, but they're taking her to Children's. I'm on my way. Michael arrived at the ER just behind the ambulance. Sophia looked drained. CT scan, she said. They think mild concussion, but checking for bleeding. Julian burst in minutes later, face ashen. He hugged Sophia hard, then turned to Michael. You okay? Fine. Car's totaled. Good. A fierce, brief hug. Thank you for calling immediately. Geneva and Ryder arrived soon after, the waiting area filled with people who loved one small girl. The doctor finally emerged. Clear CT, mild concussion, overnight observation. She's lucky. Relief crashed over them like a wave. In her room, Philip clung to Sophia and Julian, crying out the terror. Michael stayed by the door until her eyes found him. Michael, you okay too? His chest cracked open. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just worried about you. I'm okay. Doctor said my brain's just a little hurt. You were so brave. I was scared. Brave people get scared. They just keep going anyway. Did you get scared? More than ever. But you called the ambulance. Yeah. That was brave too. Later, drowsy and medicated, Philip looked at all three adults. Stay, all my people. They stayed. Julian on one side, Michael on the other, Sophia in the chair. Philip slept between the two men who loved her most, holding both their hands. At 2 a.m., with Sophia dozing, Julian spoke quietly across the bed. You keep showing up. That's what matters. Michael couldn't answer, past the lump in his throat. You're not her father, Julian said. I am. But you're something real to her now. Something important. Thank you. We're building something strange here. No name for it yet. But it's working. Michael looked at the sleeping child between them. I'll take it. Chapter 10. The beginning after the end. 6 months later. Michael waited outside Philip's preschool on his pickup Wednesday. When she spotted him, she ran full speed, backpack bouncing. Michael, we learned frogs can freeze solid and come back to life. That's wild. She grabbed his hand, chattering about amphibians all the way to the car. Pizza place with games, plain cheese for her, quarters for the claw machine. She won a purple dinosaur on the last try. Rex Jr., she declared. At drop-off, she hugged him tight. Mummy and Daddy are having a baby, she whispered. Secret until they tell everyone. But you're not everyone. That's amazing, sweetheart. Excited? Mostly. What if the baby's boring? Babies start boring, then they get fun. She nodded, satisfied. You'll still come on Wednesdays? Always. Good. I'd miss you. Upstairs, Sophia's hand rested on her small bump. Julian was home early. Philip ran to show them Rex Jr. The adults lingered in the living room. She told you? Sophia asked. Yeah. Congratulations. It doesn't change your time with her, Julian said. You've never missed a visit. That counts. She counts, Michael answered. After he left, a text from Sophia, photo of Philip introducing Rex Jr. to her stuffed animal council. Caption, she's still talking about dinner. Thank you for making her feel so loved. Michael replied, she's easy to love. And congratulations again, she'll be the best big sister. Sophia's response, thank you. For everything. For patience. For being exactly what she needed. He stared at the words a long time. He wasn't Dad. Julian was, and always would be. But he was Michael. Her Michael. The one who showed up every Wednesday and every other Saturday, without fail. It wasn't the role he'd imagined at that traffic light a year ago. It was better, because it was earned. That night in a penthouse no longer empty, walls covered in photos of a little girl with light-up sneakers and dinosaur shirts, Michael looked at his calendar. Wednesday and every other Saturday marked with tiny dinosaur stickers. Philip's days, his days, the ones that mattered most. Somewhere across town, a little girl fell asleep hugging Rex Jr., secure in the knowledge that Wednesday would come again, and Michael would be there, like always. The end.